You know security is hard, so let's assume we're probably gonna get pwned by noon. But if we all start to get the basics right, we might not fully get pwned until tonight. Let me know. Well, today we are here to talk about network pen testing, one of my favorite topics. And I have some various ideas on how to chop this up into multiple parts. So we're going to focus today on having some fun with passing and cracking creds. And I realize I kind of look like I'm in witness protection because I don't have the lights on, but that's just part of my secret squirrel vibe. I'm very secretive about things. So the agenda, we're going to kind of just get right to it because that's what we like to do on these. I'm going to do a quick introduction. Paul, I think I don't know that you'll be able to do this all live unless you got super fast fingers, but I want this upon replay to give you everything you need to get in the weeds and start hacking. So point you to some tools we'll cover in today's webinar, and then we're just going to get to it. We're going to get to hacking. If I haven't said it before, I do not have the intestinal fortitude to do live demos and tempt the live demo gods like I think maybe Paul and Dan you have in the past, and I give you lots of respect for doing that. But I've got pre-recorded videos today that still show everything, you know, quote unquote live, but just talking about it actually gives me the stomach flippies. And just to answer the question, yes, this will be up on YouTube. Admittedly, I'm not super fast about getting that stuff published, but it will be there. So, so if you need to duck out or you signed up just to get the YouTube video, it'll come your way eventually. All right. Well, my name is Brian Johnson, president of 7 Minute Security here in Minneapolis, and I do assessments, pen testing, and training. Paul, why don't you tell the folks at home a little bit about yourself?
Hey, I'm Paul Wilch from Boise, Idaho. I run a cybersecurity group called Project 7, and we just meet monthly and go over different topics and have people just come in and do demos and just building up the cybersecurity in Boise, Idaho.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Dan, hello.
Hey guys, yeah, Dan DeClaus, president of PlexTrack. PlexTrack's reporting and tracking platform, so it streamlines all of your reporting needs for pen testing and vulnerability assessments or risk assessments, and then you can track your results right then and there. So it's a perfect purple team type platform.
Well done. Thanks for being here, guys. I thought let's just kick things off here with a little poll. Get the audience's blood flowing a little bit. I don't know where you're at in your neck of the woods, but here it is flipping hot. And so what I'd like to do, if I can bring up the old poll box, is ask you the question, is it too hot outside? This is multiple choice. The answers are yes, no, bring on the burn, or would you rather have a Minnesota winter? And I don't know that you can see the results as they come in, but it looks like we've got an even split between yes, no, and would you rather have a Minnesota winter? I shared in Slack that I went camping outside last weekend, and I put up a multiple choice selection for the Slack folks. I said, I was outside in a tent with just a fan blowing over us, and I said, was 85 or hotter, yells and tent. What are you doing? And I said, that's why I don't often tent outside, and I prefer to be in a cabin. All right, let me see. So if I hit, I can't remember if I hit end poll. Do you see that then?
There we go. I see it. Yeah.
Oh, all right. So all right, there we go. It looks like the yeses have it. Nobody says bring on the burn, except my wife. She's a human ice cube, 24/7, 365. So she would probably say bring it on. But all right, good to know. Just wanted to get that out there. Okay, so let's get into this network pen testing 101, and here are some tools that will help you. If you have not joined us in the past for these webinars on YouTube, and the address here, which hopefully you're still seeing, I believe you are. There's all sorts of videos I've put up in the past, and then I've started to put these webinars there as well. So back, I don't know, a few months ago, we did a 2-part series on building your own pen test lab. Because as a little bit of a disclaimer, everything we show today, I highly advise and plead and beg with you, do this in a test environment, do this in virtual machines. Don't pen test the work environment, because a guy I know got in a lot of trouble for doing that. If you've not done a lab before, check out the do-it-yourself pen test lab. And if you invest about $500, you can get yourself a nice little Intel NUC or some other similar hardware. We went through spinning up a domain controller, spinning up a Kali box, and now today we're sort of transitioning into using those VMs and those tools to do some network pen testing. And additionally, these tools will be used throughout today's presentation. CrackMap exec, which I've got the install command right below there. I actually think that might be right in Kali these days. I think you can just type CrackMap exec at a command line and see if it says, hey, I'm there. If not, you can install it straight from apt. So that is a wonderful, I think it advertises itself as a Swiss Army knife of pen testing fun or something to that nature. And indeed it is. And I think you'll see why in a bit here. And then also grab Responder, which is a very popular tool for kind of sniffing on the network, looking where there's, looking to find network protocols that we can abuse to capture people's hashes and crack their passwords and those sorts of things. This slide I just kind of put in here at the last minute. It's a little bit off topic, but it's on topic too. When it comes to wireless, I just ran into this for a couple companies who use a static pre-shared key on their Wi-Fi, and in one company's instance, it's been the same for 8 years, and it's widely known throughout the company. The company has very high turnover, and I'll, as part of an assessment, even if wireless isn't in scope, I'll usually ask them, are you changing this password out regularly? Because if you're not, and you get rid of somebody and they're disgruntled, they might come back and easily just hop back on the Wi-Fi, and if they got some skills or got a friend with some skills, boom, they could pop back on your network and really do some damage. And I think that's just one of those things that gets overlooked, right? Like we're ushering somebody out the door. We've got maybe our HR checklist. Okay, good. They're out of all the financial systems. Their Active Directory account is shut down. Super, done. Took their key card away. They can't get back in the building. But then this seems to kind of slip through the cracks as wireless. So I've been trying to point organizations more towards like the 8021X, Active Directory, or, that's using authentication based on users and certs, not a pre-shared key. So, give that some consideration if you haven't. I think that's a pretty good layer of security to wrap around your wireless. And because this also came up with a smaller business customer yesterday, for small clients that just have a single subnet, I've really been liking these Fing boxes. And Dan, Paul, I don't know if you played with these. They're about $100, and they're about that size. They a little larger than I don't know, 2 times the size of a hockey puck, but they're really nice for if you're starting to do some of that critical security control stuff and you want to see when new machines pop on the network. I really like those. Have you guys played with those at all?
No, I haven't.
I haven't either, but I have seen the app. So I really like the app, the Fing app.
Yeah.
I never really got around to this, but I'll have to check it out.
It's kind of nice. Again, it only supports like one subnet at a time, so it doesn't have multi VLAN. So it's not the best fit for everybody. But for a smaller network, you can plug that in. It makes an inventory. You can kind of assign users and even put little icons of what each thing is. And then once you've kind of accounted for your inventory, which if we're looking at critical security controls 1 and 2 are know the hardware and software that's on your network, right? So this starts to tick some of those boxes. But anyway, get your inventory together, and then you can say, all right, Fing, tell me anytime anything else pops up on the network. You know, it's nice. Then they'll forward something off and be like, whoa, what's this about? And then you'll find somebody's plugged in a router, or they've brought in their home laptop, and then, you know, you can find that right away and kick it off the network.
So for somebody, a smaller business, so would this be good for controlling? Like you could lock it down by MAC address, or you could prevent anybody else from getting on the network?
I haven't played with it, but I believe there is a functionality in here that, yes, says don't let anything new on the network. Alert me when something new comes on the network, but then make me manually have to say, yes, it's okay, before it can actually pass traffic.
Got it.
Yeah.
Nice. Check it out.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look a little bit at network pen testing. And, you know, when I set up this particular presentation originally, I think I had like, I don't know, my eyes were bigger than my presentation or slide deck or something, where it's like, oh, there's so much to get into. What can we start with? And do we start like, you know, do we start like just with the very, very basics with Nmap and some of that stuff? Or do we go more for, you know, in a real life pen test, what are some of the things you do? And so I tried to land somewhere in the middle. And what you're seeing here is, you know, let's pretend a customer has asked me to come into their internal network. We're going to work under an assumed compromise narrative, where we're going to say, hey, if users are getting phished aggressively, they're probably going to click on something at some point that might give an attacker a shell back to their machine, or somebody might be able to sneak in, plug in a Pi with a battery pack. Or I mentioned in one of the recent episodes, we did we tucked a NUC up behind a big flat screen TV because there was ample live network jacks and power right there. So we just went in the front door, snuck around into their conference room, plugged that in. Nobody could see it, and out the door we went, and we saw something like this from home. Just a nice console where we're plugged right in and we're ready to go. So in those cases, one of the first things I like to do is run Responder, that tool we talked about a couple slides ago, to just listen on the network for certain types of traffic, like NetBIOS, LLMNR, WPAD. And when there's requests that go across the network that DNS can't resolve, they will fail over to using NetBIOS and LLMNR. And when they do, that gives our responder tool an opportunity to sort of poison those network requests and say, oh yeah, I'm the boxes that you're actually looking for. Why don't you just go ahead, let's send your authentication information this way. And so when you've got Responder open, you'll often see a screen that looks like this, where essentially this user Brian logged in from the 210 network. If you look a little higher in the log here, he had been looking for a system called 7MS-DCC01, and that's a typo. And DNS didn't know how to resolve 7MS-DCC01, so it did sort of a larger network broadcast saying, hey, does anybody know where 7MS-DCC01 is? And right there, that's when Responder says, yeah, right here, why don't you send it my way, and thus allowing us to capture this hash. Now from here, what I usually will do, if I'm not sure yet what kind of security posture an organization has as far as their password strength, is I will try to crack that. Well, let's see, I think this showed that twice. I'll try to crack that hash. So I'll just stick it in a file. So in this case, I'll just call it brian.txt. Just paste the whole thing in there. And then I'm going to run hashcat with a word list to try to see if we can get the plain text out of that hash. Now I'm using TAC-M5600. I'll show you why in a moment here. I'll give you a reference. And I'm essentially saying, let's try to crack the brian.txt using the ROCU word list. And I added a TAC force at the end because this particular machine didn't have a GPU. Normally you don't need to add that flag. But you'll watch your box rip through the ROCU word list. And in this case, you can see in the middle of the screen there, it says our status was cracked. And at the end there, we'll see that my password, Brian's password, a different guy named Brian.
Brian would never use that password.
Correct, sir. But in this case, Brian did. So that's fantastic for us, right? We've got a plain text cred we can now use to, expand our influence in the network. Just going back to that command that I used, I get questions sometimes from people saying, well, I captured this hash or this type from responder. I don't know what flag to use in hashcat to make it crack. Hashcat is giving me errors. So bookmark this URL at the top of the screen here. This is a guide for, depending on what kind of hash you crack, it'll help you know which TAC-M mode to put hashcat in. So I used 5600 because responder told me that I grabbed an NTLM v2 hash.
Hey Brian, when you go when you start brute forcing or looking for the hash and you compare it against rocku.txt, is that your go-to? You start out with that one. If that doesn't work, then do you get something larger like one of Troy Hunt's word lists?
That is a lovely comment, Paul, and I feel like you've hacked my presentation because I was just going to talk about that. That's lovely because that was just a pretty straightforward, like just use hashcat out of the box with a text list, go. But I use a couple different things I want to show you. So this is a gist that I put together. I keep pointing as if you know where I'm pointing, but I'm pointing at I'm pointing at the URL here for a write-up on a service I've talked about in the past called Paperspace. That's a virtual machine that you can virtually hook a high-powered GPU to, and for, I think it costs you about $5 a month and then $1 and change per hour to run. I use that box plus a tool called HateCrack to throw a bajillion word lists and different masks and millions and millions and millions of word combinations at that hash to try to crack it. So I don't really ever do the static word list anymore. I pretty much throw a tank at it in Paperspace. So I've loved that for a long time, but just as of the last couple weeks here, I've also been trying this project, the NPK. Now this is really cool because this is a interface that hooks into AWS and allows you to do budgeted hash cracking and throw some serious horsepower at hashes for just a specific amount of time. So in other words, with Paperspace, like I said, you run the box. It charges you by the hour whether you're cracking anything or not. So sometimes, in fact, often, I get frustrated because I'll do a crack job. I'll kick it off at maybe 10 p.m. I'll go to bed. The crack job will have finished at 11. And then all the time I'm sleeping, I'm getting charged $1 and something an hour for it to just sit there, right? Well, with this NPK, once you spin up this VM you're seeing in this screenshot, this itself, just sitting here like this, costs I think, under $1 a month to sit there. And then when you want to run a job, you follow this little wizard here. So you could use this awesome P3 2x large that can do 79.21 giga hashes a second. Cost you a little less than $1 per hour. So you could say, yeah, select that guy. You pick your hash, you pick your options, and then right here at the end it says, all right, cool. We're going to be able to try to crack against that entire key space. Look at how huge that is. We'll rip through it. It'll take about 3 hours, and out of pocket for you is under $4. So
nice.
That's so cool. So I've used it in the last couple engagements, and the only, I guess, kind of not negative, but the only feature I really want is I would love this to be able to use that hate crack project that kind of has some of the different masks and rules baked right into it, because this is a little bit more static. It's kind of like, here's a hash, run it against a word list. They do let you do some of your own masks and more advanced things, but it would be so cool to be able to just tick on options saying, yeah, use some of the hate crack methodology, go, and just, let it run. And then once the job is done, those high-powered VMs power down so they're not draining your bank account. And then you come back and it'll give you a file of hashes it was able to crack. So I think I might, for now, change my methodology a little bit to say, use this NPK first to just get the easy hashes cracked, because $4 and 3 hours, yeah, right. And then
Yeah.
maybe go back and use the paperspace box for the the more advanced or harder to crack passwords.
So this is something that's hosted on your laptop or inside your Kali box. Since it's from GitHub, you download it and you install it.
It's yeah, so you throw it on any VM, and I've got a gist. If you look at my gists on GitHub, I've got a little quick getting started guide, but you install the Amazon command line interface and a few other things, and then it actually just runs for like 45 minutes. It spins this up in the cloud with a cert on it, with a super strong password, and it's just all of a sudden you get an email saying, here's your portal, go have fun. And I was like, wow, really? And there it is, ready, at your disposal. So, yeah. And then if you decide you don't even want this later, they've made it really easy to just issue one command, and it'll destroy everything and just power everything down. And then you're not, spending any money. But I'm going to leave mine running for whatever it is, $1 a month, just so it's there. So anyway, that's more black belt hash cracking kind of things you can do to get a lot more yield for your buck. But back at our test, so we had figured out one set of creds, and once I get that set of creds, what I like to do is run crack map exec with those creds. I'm pointing here to the domain controller. That's the .200, and I'm just going to feed it my user and my password, just kind of the vanilla command. And whoops. Let's see, I think, is that going to show that again? A second. Yeah, I meant to pause it at the end there. I just wanted to point out that the results that come back to me, see how there's the pwned in parentheses there. So that indicates I've got some sort of administrator account. So when I see this makes me very happy, because this account is likely in the domain admins group. And we can verify that real quick with crack map exec by running the same command. And then you can add tac x, and then in quotes, put the command you want run, and crack map exec will go out, run it against that machine, and then give you the output. So I'm just running net group to show, just to say, hey, spit out whoever is in domain admin group. And look at that. We're in like a dirty shirt. We got administrator and Brian as members of that group. So sometimes, this is, I wouldn't say, by no means is the pen test over, but sometimes it's this quick to get to domain admin, so then I can start exploring the network with literally no restrictions, right? I pretty much own everything. I can go into people's files. I can exfiltrate data. I can, get into their applications, try to see find their customer lists, find credit card information, all that. And it sure is nice. It sure does make me happy when it's this quick, because then, you can spend all your time pilfering and less time trying to find the path to domain admin. But let's just kind of turn back the clock a little bit. Let's talk about what about when responder is quiet? I'm going to show you kind of a simulation of what I ran into a couple months ago, where I'm starting my test fresh and I'm all psyched to, give them a good test. And then I run responder, and after a long time, I'm seeing a big fat bucket of jack squat. We're just kidding. Like waiting for it, like checking the tools. Did I do something wrong? Why am I not seeing anything? And if that's the case, what I'll sometimes do is shift into asking myself this question: who out there might be using stinky passwords? I was going to say sucky, but this is a family program, so we're going to say who's using stinky passwords. And what we can do, if we've done maybe some recon on LinkedIn to sort of know who are the employees in this environment, what I've done in the past is just load up a list of their usernames. And then once again, using crack map exec, I could do a password spray against all these accounts. So in other words, I'll try to log into each account one time with the following password, winter 2018. And I'll just let this blaze through. And right there, you can see the only plus we have, this shows that we have a valid cred. So there's a test account they set up, and winter 2018 is the password. So does that make sense? Like if we do this too many times, we could risk all of a sudden locking out tons of people. They would know something is up. But I usually will do these password sprays like every 12 hours or 24 hours throughout an engagement, just to, even if I've got some initial creds, just to see if I can get more. Because I guess I go into the methodology of just as many paths, as many good creds as you can have to do more things, the better.
So how many is too many? I mean, do you do like a burst of say 100? Is that too many, or how many is too many?
So in this case, if they've got 1,000 employees, well, maybe not 1,000. If they do like got like 500 employees, I would run through this again, just using trying to log into each account once with winter 2018. But then I won't do that again for maybe another 24 hours. So the number of accounts doesn't really matter. If they do have good logging and alerting turned up, they might see this. But I can tell you definitely from my tests in 2 or 3 leading SIM vendors, they don't see this. What they alert on is if I try Paul's account quickly 3 times in a row and stop, they'll alert on that, right? But if I come in here and just do 1 attempt per account, a lot of them don't have the rules correlated to sound the alarms to the IT and security folks.
So is that a default rule that they don't have in there? Could somebody with those vendors create that rule?
They could. Yep. And I'll say of these vendors, I know 2 of the 3 I've done some work with said, "Oh, cool. We're going to write a rule for this, and we're going to push this out to our customer base." So,
Nice.
I'll be kind of retesting those in the next couple months, and hopefully they see this, because this is a favorite thing I like to do. And although I don't like the idea that now they're going to stop those sort of things, we want to help them build better detection, right? So,
hey Brian, are you able to run the password spray in a throttled mechanism to where you can load up, say, the entire user database, but it only sends like you can set a full list of like how many it sends during a certain period of time? Because I know when we worked on blue teaming and setting up, password spray attacks, it all depends on how frequent you see the requests come in, because you can't necessarily know that it's the same password, right? I mean, it's more, are you seeing a series of failed login attempts to several different people? And so that's the way the rule has to be set up. So talk about how you might even think about bypassing that rule once they have it set in.
Yeah, that's a great thought. Yeah, I've not used it for a while, but Crack Map Exec does have some extra flags to do that. If you just want to kind of do low and slow, yep, you could absolutely do that.
Do you think that will bypass most of will that bypass some of those SIM rules that vendors are putting in, do you think? Or
I would think so. So I know one of the vendors I talked to, they said, "Oh, okay, so we're going to do something like, we're going to set up a rule for when you see any amount of failed authentication attempts, not just against one account, but just a total, if you see, more than one in, I think they said just like a few seconds, just right off the bat, or from the same IP, then alert." So yes, I would think based on the rules they've shared they're going to set up, if you went real slow, maybe just did one, waited 10 seconds, did the next, waited 10 seconds, did the next, that would be a good test. I think you could probably be a little more stealthy that way. And while we're talking about this stuff, I like to talk about defense as well. And we had that weak password that we just discovered on the test account. I've been working with a lot of clients on implementing the Have I Been Pwned password database, which just released version 5, and I believe is up to 555 million bad passwords. But what you can do is you can pull that down, and there's a couple different projects out there that I've linked to here that you can attach that to your Active Directory so that as people go to change their password at the next password reset, this list of bad passwords gets checked, and then the users are not allowed to pick those. So this one up here, this DLL one, that is super slick, and I just installed that with a client this week. The whole install takes less than an hour. You basically pull down a DLL, you put it on your domain controllers, you reboot, and future password changes are checked against the Pwn Passwords database, and the speed is unnoticeable. I mean, I think when you change passwords, it might be like a 2-second delay while that password is checked, and then they either proceed with the password change or are told, nope, you got to pick something better. This second one here is if you want to download the password database and make your own custom password databases and just run everything in-house. If you don't like the idea of querying a DLL publicly, although they've got some security controls around that are kind of outside the scope of this conversation, but you could run it all in-house so that no password checking traffic is leaving your network. And you can also do the same thing with a commercial product, safepass.me, which really does the same thing, but it's very straightforward to install. So you run this MSI, you click next, 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 and that's it. Your domain controllers will now check the Pwn Passwords database locally in your network as people go to reset their passwords. Sorry, were one of you going to say something? I feel like I interrupted.
Nope.
I was curious, so when you implement this, do the users know that they've set a password that's been pwned, or does it still just say like it doesn't meet the complexity requirements?
Right. So good question. It just looks to them like hey, you don't have a complex enough password, just that regular message you get when you truly don't pick a password that meets the domain requirements. So I got a little template, and I could share it with people if they're interested, that I have either I send out, on the customer's behalf, or I send it to somebody at the customer to send out, that just lets people know, like, this is what we're doing, and now if you're picking a new password and you see this message, it could mean a few things. It could mean you really don't have a long or complex enough password, or it could mean you've picked a password on this bad password list, and here are some resources that'll help you pick a password that's hard to crack but easier for you to remember, just to kind of prepare them for that. Because you're right, it can be sort of a help desk nightmare if you just install this one day and then all of a sudden users are doing their next password change, and it may look to them like things are broken. They're like, I can't use password 1, and I can't use password 2, and I can't use password 3. And it's like, oh, that's because we don't allow a lot of bad passwords anymore. So yeah, I'd recommend kind of a two-prong approach, communicate it and/or train people on it, then roll it out. And that seems to go a little smoother. Also on this in-house one, where you actually build a DLL and kind of run everything yourself, I am not qualified at all to be behind the wheel of Visual Studio. So I got scared of this whole project, but I went through it and then did a write-up here on my documentation site. And so if you're like me, not really good with Visual Studio, this will walk you through installing it, opening up the DLL project, ticking the right boxes, selecting the right menus, and then compiling the DLL you need to actually do the password checking. So I just put that out there because a lot of the headaches I went through to get it working, I knew I would never remember again. So if you need a reference, go check it out. Okay, so let's go back to our test. So we found a test account, right? Which may sound boring by itself, but let's have a little fun with it. Let's once again use crackmap exec. I'm going to point it at the domain controller. I'll feed it my creds again. And then I'm going to add the tac shares flag, which is very handy just to see, all right, well, what's on this box? What can I maybe get to? And it looks like there is a, if you see second from the bottom there, there's a read and writable folder called shared files. Now, I think maybe I have an example a little later, but you could certainly run crack map exec against a whole class C, a whole class whatever, and see really quick across the entire environment where there are shares that you can read and write to. And I'll show you why that's fun and important in just a minute here. Okay, so I'm gonna, let's see, is this gonna do repeat again? I don't know why, if it's me or if it's Mac PowerPoint likes to just give an encore performance of slides we just saw. Oh, here we go. So what I'm gonna do, knowing that I have write access to that folder, I'm gonna craft some naughty files. And one of them is gonna be a file with an SCF extension following this format. And the important part here is this icon file value is going to be my attacking box. 192.168.55.60 is where we are attacking from. And you'll see why SCF files are great in a minute, but they're primarily used and they're used and they have a value here of icon file that they would be. Let me try this again. Take two. This icon file path would normally load an icon that would show up if you were in a share with an SCF file. So in other words, if an SCF file was sitting in a directory and you came to it, this file would be represented by an icon. Let's just say in this case, there really was a lol.ico. So what happens is that when people browse directories with these files in them, sometimes, depending on the operating system, this can cause them to inadvertently send hashed creds to our attacking box. They don't actually have to open the SCF file. It is enough for them to simply browse to a directory where an SCF file lives, which is awesome. And has, again, I was talking about how I want to get as many creds and as many hashes as often as possible. This is a great way to get them, as is link files. So let me show you what this looks like. I made just a simple URL shortcut to again my attacking box. So I'm hoping then when I upload this to that file share, someone will be tempted by the idea of a free Chipotle coupon. Double click that, and upon opening that file, again, if I've got responder listening, that machine is going to try to connect to me, send me more hashes that I can crack or pass. So let's take a look at what that looks like as I set the trap for people. I'm just going to use a built-in Kali tool here called SMB client. And I'm putting in, even though it looks erroneous, I am putting in the right number of slashes here. That's just the SMB client format. But I'm going to connect over SMB to that shared files directory. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put those two trapped files that I just made. I'm going to upload those to the root of this share. So there we go. I'm just using a put command to drop my index SCF file. And I'll do the same thing to plop the lovely free Chipotle coupon as well. And there we go. The trap is set. Now let's see what happens when, here's my fully patched Windows Server 2012 box. Let's see what happens when it just goes along. Let's say an admin's like, oh yeah, let me go to that share, which happens to live on this box. I gotta go, I gotta look at something in the marketing folder. Okay, so they've only gone this far, right? They've not opened anything. They have just browsed to this directory. Well, us back at the bad guy machine would see this. Brian was logged in. He browsed to that directory, and just for browsing to it, we've got his hash, which is wonderful. So so when this is absolutely what I do on engagements. When I get one set of creds, I try to find wherever that user can write to something, and I flip and put these files everywhere again, so that I get more and more and more and more hashes. In the same way, let's just take a look at this. Let's just say here's a admin logged into his Windows 10 box, and you know, he's going to go see something on a share, and oh goodness, free Chipotle coupon. I think I do want to check that out. And probably, I guess I should have corrected this. Probably I wouldn't name my file shortcut ha 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 lol lol. I would just leave it as an IP address so that they don't they don't look at that and think, oh, what's that 55.60? But you know, maybe just make it backslash, you know, coupon, free coupon or something, so that they're not weary of what they just clicked. But again, on the back end here, or on our attacking box, we would see that a hash has been passed to us for capturing or passing. So let's say those were the first hashes we got in an engagement, and we'll run them through Hashcat once again. So in this case, I just loaded up both sets of creds that I captured on this little endeavor. And you know, one thing I have done in the past, just to your question, Paul, about, you know, running through some starter word lists, is there's a project on GitHub called seclists that has a bunch of great password user lists in it. So sometimes, even on my low-powered Kali box, I'll run hashcat and against my hashes file, and then I'll specify here star.txt. And so this will just look for all text files in that password subfolder and run through every one of them sequentially to see if we can get a hit. And on my low-powered Kali box, that's going to take a while. I think I'm going to skip to the next one here. That
what's the low power? Is that a 8 gig or a 4 gig RAM and i3, or what's
yeah,
low power?
I should have specified low powered in that there's no GPU attached, and so you know, its efficiency in ripping through word lists and you know, getting a high yield rate is you know, peanuts compared to what like the Paperspace or the NPK would do. But in this case, we take a look. We recovered 0 out of 2 hashes. So, you know, we can move on to other things, but I did just want to make a note that while this is not something I do personally, I don't want to forget to point out that you might want to take a swing if you're interested / desperate at brute forcing local admin accounts, because from what I've seen out there, they often don't have any sort of lockout threshold. So if you wanted to, for example, take a stab at cracking a local administrator password on a box, I'm going to specify this .220 IP, that's a workstation. And I'm going to try to crack the local admin account by specifying local auth here at the end. And, you know, as you can see, we're ripping through here. It's not stopping us. It's not saying anything about the account being locked out. But again, a SIM solution, good logging and alerting solution may catch that. And to me, I've heard of other people doing it. I don't personally do it because I haven't gotten to that point where I feel like I want to go that loud and just machine gun around the environment, you know. But that is an option. What I would like to do, or what I like to do if I get stuck in not finding any cracked hashes, is I look for opportunities for SMB signing abuse. Let me show you the tool, and then I can talk about that a little bit. With that responder toolkit comes a nice utility called Run Finger, and find where SMB signing is enabled or disabled. So the general idea is if you find hosts that have SMB signing disabled, you can pass hashes to them. Okay, you don't have to know the clear text. You can just pass authentication to them and get a shell or run a command. Most environments I've been up against, I'll find that, in fact, my test environment is similar. The .200 IP up here, the domain controller, that usually has SMB signing on by default. And then down here, .230, that's a server or a workstation, that does not have SMB signing on. And typically, in the environment, the servers, general servers and workstations don't have SMB signing on. So I'm always trying to sound the alarms and talk to clients about this, because it's something that's technically easy to turn on, and I'll have a slide for that, but stuff can break. Like if your SAN or other devices can't talk SMB signing, all of a sudden some file sharing things, file communications can bust. But anyway, I'll run finger and find victims for SMB signing attacks. So in this case, we've got the .230 host we can use. And then what I'll do is something like this. I'll get a couple of screen sessions going where I'll run responder with a little bit of a modified config, and I'll just let that run in the background. Then I'll escape out of there, and I will go into a multi-relay session. And multi-relay is another tool that comes with, let me back that up a little bit, comes with responder. Let me try to catch it. It's like Pokemon. It is a tool for passing credentials to a victim host, okay? So I've got responder running in one window. I'm running multi-relay, and I'm saying, all right, responder, when you get hashes, I want you to target this .230 IP. And as far as usernames, just try to pass any username that comes along with the hashes to this target. And by default, if an administrative account gets captured via one of your hashes and passed to .30, it will by default spawn kind of a limited interactive shell for you to do more nefarious things with. So again, responders running in the background, now multi-relay is running. Just gonna let that run for a while and relay credentials for all users that it sees. And often within a couple hours, sometimes within a couple minutes, I get treated to this lovely screen. I now have a shell on this box. You see I'm right there, see Windows System 32. And I can do more things from here. Just a simple example is I like to run the dump command, and this is gonna dump all the hashes for the local accounts. So you know how we were trying to get into that local administrator account. Here is that local administrator's hash, and now we can pass that hash around the environment. We don't even need to try to crack it with anything. So I'll show you that in the last couple slides here. But I did just want to say again, to repeat, turning on SMB signing in the environment isn't technically hard. Here's like a screenshot of a GPO with a few settings you need to change. But you'd want to do this slowly, test slowly, test often, so that all of a sudden people are like, I can't copy files anywhere.
Hey Brian, is that enabled by default now? Do you see this on newer networks where SMB signing is on? Because I'm thinking maybe when they build the network, they turn it on for security, then they just work around it, versus an older environment where they don't want to turn it on because they don't know what's going to break. Have you seen anything like that?
I'll have to look. I can't remember the defaults. I know all newer Windows domain controllers have SMB signing on themselves by default, but I don't think they turn on SMB signing by default. But maybe somebody can drop a Q&A or drop a comment and let me know. But again, I'm just saying, when I run that run finger like across a whole subnet, I'll see the two domain controllers, SMB signing on, everything else off. So again, just showing how easy that relay attack was. I try to make a little project, coming out of a pen test, or at least a recommendation to say, you should really look into this. It might be painful to get everything working potentially, but I'd say it's worth it for hardening up your environment, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so again, we dumped out of that one machine, we dumped out the local admin hash. We don't know the password, but we don't need to, thanks to our good friend crackmap exec. So I copied that hash to a text file, and now watch this. This is like one of my favorite things, just because it feels like cheating. I'm going to use crackmap exec to sweep the whole subnet, and I'm going to pass the user administrator, and then not the password, but just the hash with the TAC H flag. And I'm going to add local auth because I want to try the authentication locally. I don't want to try to authenticate with a domain account. And then I just let this run. And once it's done, when I see a screen like this, I get giddy, like Jojo the Indian Circus Boy with a pretty new pet, to quote one of my favorite movies. So what we're seeing here is that on desktop 2, desktop 1, and app 1, local administrator account is the same, and we have local admin on those boxes. Essentially, we own those 3 boxes and can do whatever we want now. We can plant malware, we can plant backdoors, we can steal data, all because we're able to pass those local account hashes. This is very common to see on pen tests, and so coming out of that finding, when we're having the delivery meeting, I point them heavily towards LAPS. This is a Microsoft tool, local administrator password solution. It's free. What it does is you install it via GPO in your environment. It'll reach out, touch every machine, and then randomize the local administrator password per machine. So in other words, if I would have done that trick to dump out hashes on box 1 and then tried to pass it around the whole environment, it would have said, nope, those creds only work on 1 box. And so then I'm kind of sandboxed, right, into 1 machine, and I don't have creds to abuse other machines.
Hey, Brian, have you seen anything for, smaller businesses? Maybe they don't have a domain controller. They're just in work groups. Have you seen anything similar to that, or do you have a solution, or have you thought of anything?
No, but I will look into it. Because that could certainly be something I'd run across. I'm wondering if you could script this, if you had like at least a management agent on each machine, if you could do that via like a PowerShell push or something. But yeah, good call. And also I found the Microsoft documentation pretty good, but once I actually went through this myself, I found some little gotchas and frustrating things. So on my documentation site here, if you click on blue team, then click local administrator password solution, this is like my step-by-step, where to find everything, how to tune the GPOs, little install dependencies that weren't really covered. And I'll tell you, Paul, honestly, like, and Dan, I'm like, I'll get notes sometimes from people saying, wow, that must have taken a long time to write. Thank you for doing that. Selfishly, I write it for myself because there's no way I would remember all those things at my age. I would start from scratch on the next LAPS install and be like, well, we're done here for the day. I can't stand this. I'm going to flip a table. So please go use that. It would make me happy to know that you were saved some headaches, all of you, by checking that out. All right. So, that's good. We're running about the perfect amount of time. I thought maybe even this content was too much, but I think this is a perfect kind of bookmark point for today. So just to kind of recap and conclude, hopefully you find that this kind of stuff is fun. I know some of you have been doing it for a long time. Some of you are just getting into this. But the main tools we looked at were Responder. So that's your friend for capturing and passing hashes. Hashcat is your amigo for cracking those passwords. And then CrackMapExec does a good job of passing local and domain admin creds around to see, where else do you have creds in the environment? Where else are you local admin? Where else do you have read-write access to file shares, right? So you can go in there, plant yourself some more of those SCF and link files to hopefully just keep those hashes just pouring into Responder, right? Collect them all. And then we talked, sprinkled in here a little bit, we talked about how to stop some of this shenanigans from happening in your environment. So using strong passwords is a great defense. I meant to say ban, B-A-N, bad ones, with the Pwn Passwords project. That's all free. Enable SMB signing, also free, but you want to proceed carefully. And install LAPS, which is also free, but takes a little bit of tuning to get going. I should mention though, once you get the GPOs going, once you have LAPS getting pushed out to the machines, it doesn't require any like software updates, or it should for the most part be a set and forget it. But once in a while I'll find that I'll query the list of machines that have LAPS on them, and I'll find there's a few stragglers, especially Windows 8 for me never seemed to like LAPS in general. But it's very easy to quickly push a little script to manually install apps on those boxes. But by and large, you get the GPOs working right, and within a couple days, it should be spread across your enterprise. And let's see. If you want to talk about more of this stuff, I just want to throw the invite out. 7ms.us/Slack has a link there in the middle to come and join their chat channel. And we got a lot of people who are new, a lot of people who are very seasoned. All of them are wonderful about sharing their knowledge, and it's building each other up and helping each other get better at this and building their career in security. And so we'd love to have you there if you're not part of that already. And then coming up next, the next webinar planned on the calendar as of this morning is I'm going to do a repeat of a talk I gave at Secure 360 a few months ago that was not recorded, and some of you have asked for it. It's all about, so you want to start a security company. And my pitch or my blurb to that conference was, are you sick of spending your days and nights lining the pockets of some huge heartless corporation? Yes. Have you had enough of bosses who used your hard work to propel themselves further up the corporate ladder? Yes. Perhaps it's time to leave the security and stability of a comfortable corporate job and a reliable paycheck for the terrifying, unpredictable world of small business ownership, which, Dan, I know you did not all that long ago. And would you ever go back?
Not yet. No.
Yeah, that's me too for about the first year. It's like, not yet. Till the wife says it's time, I'm sticking with it. No. But anyway, so you can sign up now, 7ms.us/webinars. And I think that'll be fun because I have enjoyed the journey, but it's absolutely been terrifying. And so I want to, this is not going to be a Tony Robbins, like, hey, you just go get the world by the tail and put it in your pocket. It's going to be more of a like, this is scary and it can really suck at times, but it can also be glorious. So it's a hard, honest look at small business security company ownership. So invite you to check that out. And then I know we're running on the last couple of minutes here, but let me fire up one more quick poll for thinking about more things we want to talk about in Network Pen Testing 101 Part 2. Let me launch this. What kind of things would you like to do? We can do more fun with passwords. We can do some things that I like to do with Nmap and other tools to look for low-hanging fruit type of exploits. We can look at some things to evade antivirus, some tools to live off the land, just not trying to obfuscate payloads and all that, but just, live off of built-in system commands that are probably not going to trigger alerts. And then if you've got other ideas too, you can shoot them to me over email. Looks like so far, most people are saying looking for low-hanging fruit exploits would be good. Evading AV, more living off the land. Okay, good. I will share those results, and that's what I will keep in mind. Let me just screenshot this while we're talking about it. I will think about that when developing the next one, which will probably be, let's see, August, like September-ish. That'll be after the So You Want to Start a Security Company. With that, I think we are an hour perfect, right?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So that's all we have. Dan, Paul, anything I missed? Any closing comments for everybody before we let them get back to their day?
I'm good.
Well, great job, Brian. Thanks for your effort in getting this all together.
Thanks all of you. Thanks for joining me, Paul and Dan. And let's do this again soon. And yeah, have a great rest of your week.
All right. Talk to you guys later.
All right. See y'all. Bye-bye.